Mama, I got bad news, bad news. I've been rolling with some bad dudes, bad dudes. I've been trying to get a bag.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Ashes to Awesome podcast, Rising in Recovery. Our podcast provides light, hope, and understanding about addictions and mental health to people living within that life and the people who love them. Today's episode is brought to you by Yacha Treatment Centers in Phuket, Thailand. They are a clinic run by clinicians, not a business run by businessmen. And they know that where addiction is the smoke, trauma is the fire. Learn more at yatracenters.com. That's yatracentre.com. Hello, listeners and watchers, supporters. I'm not sure what you're calling me right now, but we'll figure that out. Welcome to another edition of Kaleidoscope Wednesday on the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chuck LaFlange, and of course, in virtual studio with me today is Ryan Bathgate for another episode. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm pretty good, Chuck. I mean, another week down.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. I got about 20 years till retirement. I don't know what to tell you, man. No, things are good. Things are good. I'm actually really enjoying these topic series we're doing. I think it's a lot of fun, and I can get a little bit erratic in my thoughts, so this kind of helps me to have a little bit of structure and ground a bit. So, and more than anything, I've gotten some pretty cool feedback lately. Just people I've known for years that listen to the show and are it's helping them, and like
they at the end of the day, right? Yeah.
Well, it's funny, like you just go through life and you have all these personas, and persona I think is a Latin word for mask.
Oh, okay.
And so we have all these, like, and I have them everywhere I go. Like, I got baseball Ryan, and I got, work Ryan, and then there's family Ryan. You know what I mean? And,
of course.
So it's funny how, like, some people are just like, wow, I didn't realize that this is what you do. And so it's been very cool. It's enlightening to know. I mean, our goal here is from the very beginning has been, to help people navigate through the vigors of life. And we don't really have a system set up to support the human experience. We have a system set up to support the consumer experience. And so, I think that, it's just more evidence of that people are actually getting something out of this. And it's really fulfilling for me.
That's validating, right? For sure it is, right? Yeah, and it may have our recent move to doing these series here. I'm sure I told you, but you're busy doing your holiday thing there for a minute. Lisa and I got to go to Canmore and meet Mike Miller from the Yacha Treatment Center. So we sat with him for hours, and we could have sat for hours more. We didn't get back to the city till about 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And we could have just kept going. And for me, it was incredible, right? To sit in with that kind of experience and that kind of education. And I was just completely blown away. And some of the questions I asked, I'm sure seemed, surface level or rudimentary to them, but they sure didn't make me feel that way, right? I felt like I had a seat at the big boy table there. So it was something else. But now Mike and I are talking about doing a series of some kind. Right.
Yeah, cool.
So, right. Yeah. I think it might have turned into a thing here now. So,
Mike's such a wealth of knowledge and really knows his craft well. And, I think you just got the opportunity to sit down with two wonderful human beings and, and explore, which is, it's a great part of our brain to be working out of. The exploration side, and it also invites so much access to connection through emotional mediums. So that's
absolutely.
I'm envious.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, it would have been great to have you sitting there. As I'd said to you, we'll have to do a real live in person episode one of these days, Joe. When we got the opportunity to do it, because it'd be something else to put us all in one room, right?
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah. Another thing that happened, Lisa, as a school friend of hers from back in Sparwood, BC, in high school. Oh dear, why can't I think of it? Oh, Shannon Burness. Her episode aired yesterday. For anybody that's listening, go back and check it out. It's an interesting thing that's happened. So it was a recovery episode, and for me, recovery episodes are, I don't want to. They're generally speaking not as interesting as some of the other stuff we do, to me, right? But I feel they're really important, and getting those stories out is super important too. However, after speaking to Lisa, this one actually, and I don't mind outing her, Lisa cracked a tear over this episode, which is a very rare thing, as we all know.
Yeah.
So the two of them had so much of the same experience in school and all the same troubles, and neither one of them had any idea the other person was feeling that way.
Yeah,
Right?
how common is that?
Exactly, exactly, right? So,
and to be honest with you, like a lot of the basis of our show is that like people going through things in isolation does not typically lead to a positive outcome. People going through things in togetherness usually leads to strength building.
Absolutely, right. So, she's actually going to come on for the ramble, so we can kind of dissect that a little bit more and unpack it, and kind of dynamic between the two of them, and just to talk about that, and maybe help people in their future open up to each other a little bit more. We'll see how that goes, but
that's cool.
Yeah. Now, of course, if they had had an emotional lexicon at their disposal back then, perhaps these things wouldn't have happened. So there's
what
a
a segue.
Yeah. It's kind of weak at surface for sure, but yeah.
That's all right. Oh, water, that looks good. So I guess we're gonna look at part 2 today.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. So I should say I've got the wheel up behind me here. That's the wheel we made in Detox. It's nowhere near as Ryan's a bit of an emotional feeling wheel snob. I'm just saying. So, so it's up there just for kind of posterity and whatever. We'll break out the real one, I think, on next week's when we finish off this series. But
yeah, I keep one on my corkboard right here, and of course on my fridge for the kids. I like the colors, man. I think they're really helpful for me to identify.
Of course, right? I get that. I think it's funny to.
And to be honest with you, like one of those things that I do when beginning a process like this is I stay away from the actual words, and we use colors and shapes to start the process of expanding the emotional lexicon.
Okay.
So they will say like, how do you feel? And it's like, you can't say good, bad, or mad. So they won't know a word. So I'll just ask them to close their eyes and give me a color, and then what does that color mean to you? And then I'll ask to give me a shape. And if it's a red spiky ball, there's probably a lot of anxiety or anger or something like that. If it's a circle that's blue or green, it's probably peaceful or tranquil, or and then we start to use those images to transcend into expanding the emotional lexicon.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if you ever don't know how you feel, try using shapes and colors.
There you go. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so part 2.
Part 2. What you got for us?
I wanted to I like Daniel Goleman a lot when it comes to emotional intelligence. So anybody ever gets the opportunity to pick up a Goleman book, his first book, I think, is 85, was called Emotional Intelligence. It's really put the term on the map, although it had been used since the 1960s. And so we did a definition last week. I think definitions are really important because
emotional lexicon would kind of right? The whole thing is about definition, right? So I would say that's important.
Exactly. And so so defining these things and sharing a common language is, in any culture development, it's extremely important to have symbols, to have language, and the other thing is rituals, like eating dinner together, for example. And so that's how we kind of develop or be invited into some sense of culture. And so Goleman says his definition is really simple, which I love simple. The more simple I can define something, the better off it is for me and my brain.
I'm a fan of simple. Yeah, absolutely.
And so his definition is the emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions. Boom. Really simple.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Now, what isn't so simple is how do we apply that to success, perceived success in areas of our life, whether it's social, family, friends, whatever. And I'm gonna add work life because I think most of us spend 8 hours a day in some place doing something for the rest of from the age of 19 to 65, and so. I think it's we don't necessarily choose our colleagues like we do with our friend circle, and so I think it's important to understand where we're coming from and having a process to be able to regulate our emotions when we come into conflict or we come into difference of opinion. Another example of that is like having an understanding of reality construction is important because it is, back to that Buber thing, the I, it, I, thou.
Define reality construction. What do you mean when you say that?
How we build the lens we see the world through at any time, in any part of any given day.
Okay.
So,
okay.
often we live in a reality that is borrowed or given to us because we lack the awareness to have choice. And once we have choice, we have freedom. So when we live in other people's reality that's been put upon us, and like Shane is a good example of that kind of reality put upon us, we start to feel a level of oppression instead of freedom, being the opposite, right? It's kind of a one or the other. And so when I construct my reality, I mean, one of the things I like to practice is the lens of beauty. And that helps me construct the reality that I live in for me. Defining words is another example of how I create my reality that is built for me. And so at any given time, I can be seeing the world as a beautiful place. All I need to do is shift lenses. I want to see the world as a prosperous place. I shift lenses, and like instead of seeing like the world as a cold, hard place, which it can be, and I accept that, but I also believe everything's an opportunity, and so no matter what I go through, I can always shift lenses to see the opportunistic lens of whatever my experience might be at any given time. And I usually find that I make plans, and my plans never work out. But the happenings...
If you want to make God laugh, make plans.
Yeah, right. If you were to believe in traditional God.
Fuck's sakes.
So... so like it's amazing how that can happen. But I often wake up on the wrong side of the bed because I'm a bit of a grouchy old man. And my trick is just to stop, take a big diaphragmatic breath, belly breath, and open my eyes to the lens of beauty and see the world as a beautiful place. And instantly, I've shifted my consciousness into a different realm of existence. So that's what I mean by the reality construction.
Okay.
So, where are we going to go from there? I think, I think it's important to, should we talk about managing? No, you know what? First thing I'm going to do is we're going to go off on the elements of EI, emotional intelligence.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, we're supposed to cover that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so, again, this is a Goleman concept. I'd like to say it's mine, but it's not. And so Goleman says that there's 5 key elements to emotional intelligence. There's self-awareness, which is, you can't do anything without that.
Yeah, right.
Self-regulation, which is the work. Motivation, empathy, and social skills.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but the difficult ones for me are the middle: regulation, motivation, and empathy.
Yeah, right.
Which is,
for me, the empathy is like, I'm a pretty hypersensitive guy, but
yeah, I know, but I'm hypersensitive, but extremely selfish. You know what I mean? So it's been work. And I'm not even like I consider myself an empathetic person now,
of course.
It's taken years of practice, and I want to say, if you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to apply these things to your life, I think the most important thing is to understand that this is a practice in the art of living, and practice is the key word. And you know what? It's not the key word. Art is the key word.
Yeah, right.
Because art is individual expression that is subjective, interpreted in many different ways. That's the hermeneutics word, that $20 word that out of there. Anyway, so, and it's kind of like, I talk so much about emotional, we need to raise our level of emotional intelligence, but the IQ is also extremely important, especially in this process, because it's important to be logical about situations before attending to them.
Yeah.
So we do need to use our brain, or we're monkeys.
I love that analogy. I think about that every single time the term EQ comes up in my brain. I think about the chimps.
Yeah.
Right. It just puts everything into perspective. And for anybody that wasn't listening, if you've watched that Chimp Empire on Netflix right now, it shows that with a high EQ and a low IQ, they just run around smashing each other all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Completely
and
animalistic.
if you go the opposite, well, then you're not much good to humanity either. Right. So somewhere in the middle is where we want to be. Right. So when I first started the show, we were audio only because of my broken smile. Due to an act of violence, I couldn't bear to see myself on camera or in a mirror. My self-esteem was shattered, and it was painful to relive the violence whenever I saw my broken smile. Things had changed. The podcast was taking off. My friends and family had welcomed me back. I had my sobriety. My mental health should have been improving, but there were days when I couldn't face myself in the mirror or on camera. The pain was just overwhelming. Then I discovered dentkids.com, and in just 3 short weeks, my life transformed. They sent me the molds, I followed their instructions, I sent them back. What I received was a quality denture that fixed my smile, all at a fraction of the cost of traditional dentures. The most expensive product is just under $600, and the prices only go down from there. So if you have a loved one who is in recovery from addiction and needs their smile back, or if you need to fix your smile, I highly recommend checking out dentkits.com. I'm proud to be an ambassador for this product. Thanks for listening, guys. Now back to the show.
And so like, you've been downtown East Side, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so that's a good example of what drugs do to our emotion center, because pretty much, all those, to quote Gabor hungry ghosts, they're really operating on a animalistic perspective. So it is fight or flight survival mode at all times, high sensitivity, and not a lot of rational, logical reasoning. And pretty much, so when we're in fight or flight, we lack our identity. We lack who we are as human beings because we don't have access to those parts of our brain that really embody the characteristics that would make Ryan Ryan. And so if I were to be in it, I wouldn't be this person. And so when we get away from it and you do your 18 months of post-acute withdrawal, there's almost like a rebirth of being.
Yes.
And we all experience it. And eventually, like, we have to keep working because trauma catches up to us. The things that the reasons that we used substances as a coping mechanism will always catch up to us.
Okay.
So how do we prepare for that? Well, here's a good example. We start learning about emotional intelligence, and I think it's a massive factor in our ability to navigate pretty much life itself, never mind addiction or mental health issues. So and the other part is, like, emotions are the medium of connection. We don't connect cognitively, we connect emotionally. Yes. And it's an evolutionary design. I've said it many times. Love is the thing that's kept us on this planet for this long and keep evolving. I mean, I feel like we've gone way off of what the design was for our being, due to really the miscalculation of importance on IQ instead of a balance of IQ and EQ.
Okay.
So, anyways, that rabbit hole end. So let's talk about number one. Romans 5, okay?
Yeah.
Number one is self-awareness. Now, self-awareness is simply, and again, love simple, being comfortable with your own thoughts and emotions.
Is it about being comfortable, or is it about being aware, though, right? Because, I mean...
Well, what do we do in practice? Of course, in the beginning, anything new is not comfortable. So it is, but the practice of awareness is developing a level of comfort with our thoughts and emotions. And you think about it, and really the thoughts is the easy one because of the social dynamics. The emotions is the one that we struggle with, especially in the mental health substance use, because we're not, like I said, I didn't have a feeling wheel in a textbook in school.
Yeah,
I learned about up here. I didn't learn about in here. And for listeners, I'm pointing to my head and my heart. So I guess, it's important to have a complete knowledge of your emotions. your feelings, your behaviors, your values, strengths, and I don't like the word weakness, so I'm going to say our growing edges.
Okay.
And then the awareness part is how it affects the people around us. What are we bringing out in people that are around us? And
Okay.
so this is where the self awareness is the logical part of like how is my experience impacting the person that I'm connected with. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it
Because
does.
often,
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about being selfish. This is where I miss. I don't
Yeah.
think about what I say and how it's going to impact the other person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as much as it's fun to come on here, I am the poster child of trial and error.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've messed everything up at least once.
Yep.
I've hurt people with my words. I've hurt people with my actions, and I've done all these things because I lacked in self awareness.
Okay.
So, I guess like this is a part of like reactive and proactive.
Yep.
Like when I'm reactive, I'm in history. When I'm
Hmm.
proactive, I'm in the now, building for tomorrow.
Okay. Yep.
And so when I'm proactive, I'm in choice, which means I'm in state of freedom. When I'm
Yes.
reactive, I'm lacking choice. History's making the choice for me, and
Yeah.
I've created my own self oppression.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So then we go into step 2, which is self regulation.
Okay.
All right. So this is about understanding your emotions and how to use them instead of have them use us.
Yes. Okay.
So I want to be careful around the word control
Hmm.
because I don't know if that is fitting here.
Manage. Manage.
Yeah,
No.
or
Maybe.
regulate.
Right. Let's
Right.
use the word given. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, right? Right. Jesus.
Right. Yeah. Really going deep
A
on that
couple of
one.
engineers sitting here, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I think this is where we, the psychosomatic or the mind and the body are connected, and we by regulating, we're learning how to appropriately manage our emotions and being, and then the mind comes in about being thoughtful of how we're
Okay.
impacting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is one of the big parts of this is learning about integrity as a value.
Hmm.
Learning how what's the word I'm looking for? Being accountable, which is to me that's under the umbrella of responsibility, which is another form of freedom. And so, this is where I get this is I always talk about like there are no mistakes, there's only lessons, and so that's a matter of perception, which is a locus of control. And so when I learn how to be accountable, I experience freedom. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so accountability is inside out.
Hmm.
Victim is outside in, and those are opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
So in order for me to be accountable, I experience freedom. When I'm a victim, I experience oppression.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
And so
Yeah.
just think about how freeing that is. To like the truth will set you free. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
and all
Right.
that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, if you own it, everything gets better, right? Every time, right? That's accountability for you, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. So so to self regulate is to control and manage my emotions, my intrinsic resources, and the abilities that I can get to bring to the world. And so when we act on impulse, I mean it's the opposite. Which how many times have I felt self oppression by acting on impulse?
yep.
Like every time,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think like when we talk about impulse and self control, this is under the self regulation, tag.
Hmm.
So when we're in self regulation, we are effectively analyzing our emotions and how they apply to a situation to make better choices for ourselves. And and so really we're thinking about the now and the tomorrow and the unwritten future. When we are and then when we're in impulse, it's just rash. It's about the right now, and probably an influence of history. So they and if you've been listening to the show all along, the first thing I ever talked about was the phases of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. 2 being fictional, 1 being in the now. Self-regulation falls under the now and affects the unwritten future.
I'm not sure if you've heard about our new podcast, Morning Cup of Kindness. It's a quick 5-minute story about some sort of kindness to get your day started on a positive note. The other thing we've done is to tie it in with being able to promote a nonprofit or fundraiser for absolutely free. All you got to do is tell a 5-minute story about kindness of any kind that will turn into an episode. These can be either submitted or recorded with me inside Virtual Studio. It's super easy. It takes less than 10 minutes. It's a super easy thing to do. And when you're done with that, you can take a minute at the end of the episode and promote a fundraiser or nonprofit or otherwise good cause. And this can be pre-recorded promotion, or you can talk about it at the end of the episode, or if you want some help making a commercial and putting something together, I'm more than happy to help with that as well. Shoot us a message at ashestowasomepodcast@gmail.com, or just DM us through any one of the socials. If you see the logo there, you can shoot a message. All right, guys. Thanks, guys. Now, back to the show. And remember, if you've got to be something, be kind. Yes.
Which speaks to, that's the freedom element.
Yeah.
And then obviously the opposite happens with impulse, or what's the other word? It's an amygdala thing. Anyway. So this is here's but you know what, you always talk about turn my sorries into
thank yous. Yeah.
Into thank yous. That is a self-regulation tool.
Without a doubt. I was thinking that as you were sitting here talking.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
So that's choice. So that's me choosing to turn a perceived negative into a positive by shifting perception, entering into our locus of control.
And in my anecdotal experience, by far the most powerful thing I've ever done that way. In
right.
Vernacular anyway, right?
And what you did there was you used your heart and your mind. You used logic to deal with a perceived negative emotion and turn it into a constructive problem solver.
Yeah, right.
So,
gold star on my chart. There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's a good example of like the internal dialogue that we have. I'm such an idiot. Now that's not very helpful, is it? Right?
No.
And so what can we change that into?
Got an opportunity to learn something here. Right?
And
that's right.
Yeah, right. So that's the now,
okay.
and then
do better in the future. Right.
Boom.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You nailed it. I mean, and it's really that simple. It's like, so I think it's important from an emotional standpoint to pay attention to the dialogue that's happening between my ears. And then I also like to identify whose voice that is, because usually if it's talking, I'm listening, which means I'm the host listening, just based on basic tenets of conversation. That means something else is talking.
Yeah.
And then so now we're talking about, and then I like to do a check. Like one of the things I like to do with my emotions when I'm in regulation is the first thing I want to check is this feeling stale? Is it old?
Yeah.
And if it's old, it probably doesn't belong, and it's been hanging on for years, impacting my relationships all the way along in the way I see myself.
Okay. Yep.
So I think with some self-regulation, I think it's important to develop some kind of reflective practice for yourself. I would recommend on a daily basis. I would like to say that I do that every day, but I don't. No. And my life would be better if I did. I can tell you that much.
Right.
And so,
right.
like... Yeah. But I mean, if you get the opportunity, you lay down at night, you look back on your day, I would pay attention to what the feeling is underneath that conversation you're having. And then if it's a negative one, then I want to use this regulation part to switch into a positive mindset and to analyze and understand what the emotions are from a asset lens.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we touched down on that pretty good, eh?
I think so. Yeah. So next week we want to get into locating, right?
Oh yeah, but we still have
Gandolin.
We still have a couple more to do here, and I'll be quicker on these, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so step 3 is
Oh yeah,
motivation.
I thought you were trying to segue
No,
in.
no.
Okay.
No, no, no.
Edit. Okay.
But we're gonna
Okay.
no, and we're gonna come back to that at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so step 3 is motivation,
Okay.
and really I'm talking about intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
So when somebody has a high level of emotional intelligence, they're easily able to get themselves into a place to motivate and create meaning without needing extrinsic or external influence or support.
Really?
Yeah,
I wouldn't have seen the two linked at all, actually.
well, emotional intelligence isn't everything, man. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything we do involves emotions. Emotions are like, that's the shame of like our modern society, is that we are taught to be extrinsic in nature, when really, and we're not taught about emotions, but emotions, they're always going. We're always feeling something, and if we can't connect to that, then it's probably doing damage outside of awareness.
Okay.
And so expanding our horizon of awareness gives us the opportunity to access the locus of control to be able to regulate these things. Now, it's not a coincidence that highly emotional intelligent people they don't need external rewards like money, fame, recognition, accolades. And if they do, it's usually fleeting or temporary, and realize that all they need to drive is from within.
Yeah.
So, like inner passion is something that you and I know well. And that is an excellent way to sustain a motivation. The other thing is, and I'll touch on this quickly, any behavior that we have is always sustained by an emotional foundation.
Okay.
So if we do a behavior that doesn't have emotional driver behind it, it's not going to last. And I always think about like when I went back to the gym when I was like 39, I hated every second of it. I lasted 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But when I loved it again, which I do now, I feel that void when I don't get there. And it has nothing to do with the physical. It has nothing to do with appearance, and everything to do with how I feel about myself in that moment as a connected, comprehensive human being. And that's just one example of something that gives me sustainable motivation. Because if it comes from my heart, like this show, man, like I love this show.
I was just thinking, that's my motivation, right? It's coming from, it's definitely intrinsic, right?
And, how many weeks have I missed?
Ridiculous amount of hours, right?
Well, I've missed no weeks, 2 weeks, I think, one sick, one on holidays, and I felt that void because my passion for this is a driver, and that makes it sustainable.
Absolutely.
So it also gives us the ability to have better decision making and understanding situations from different perspectives and other people. So we kind of get into empathy, which is our next thing. So what I'll say about motivation is a good way of practicing this is setting small goals daily and knocking them down. And that develops, it raises our intrinsic resources of self-esteem, self-worth, and self-respect, which is primary in our ability to navigate the world with our head held high.
Yeah.
So empathy, simply, the simple definition, feeling with, our ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes to try and understand. Try to, from an emotional perspective, trying to understand how they feel and what their experience is with the feeling, especially when you're dealing with conflict. This is where empathy and validation remove defense mechanisms.
The difference between sympathy and empathy.
Sympathy is outside looking in.
Yep.
So sympathy is like statements like Brene Brown talks about, like, at least you didn't, is a sympathy statement.
Okay.
Where empathy is, I'm with you. I'm in the darkness with you.
Yeah.
And it's not at least you didn't, oh, I lost my child. Well, at least you can get pregnant. I had a divorce. Well, at least someone loved you and married you. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's a sympathy statement. An empathy statement is, that's got to be really hard. What can I do? How can I help? How can I be with you? And so, sharing feelings is, thoughts are individual, right? And so that's why it makes it hard to connect with thoughts. But emotions are like this massive pool that it encompasses the entire globe, that we all share these things. We all have our understanding of love, of pain, of disappointment, of rejection, you know? And so people who are empathetic are much better at understanding how to be with, how to respond to other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So I guess, and you know, it obviously opens us up to like our ability to like provide some, you know, uplift or some support or some validation. And so, I guess there's a tripping spot here because if we don't use our self-regulation and our self-awareness, then it can almost work against us. So in order to be able to be empathetic, you have to have those other two, and that's why they're in this order.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, I think motivation is more personal, but it doesn't have to be. So I think that you know that's why it kind of fits in the middle. And then we have number 5, our social skills. So when let's see, how can I? Okay, so social skills gives us the ability to expand our horizon of understanding, making ourselves more than we were before we entered into any given connection. Okay. So building meaningful relationships, and I said meaningful relationships, is extremely important to achieve stronger understanding of others and myself.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, like I learned so much from a emotion connection about about the other. While I'm learning about the other person, I'm learning about who I am. And so it's just like transaction of growth that just keeps growing and expanding, you know, making us more than we were before we entered into each conversation. You know, the shame is that, you know, we come out of a conversation with somebody that we've made a really good, like, transcending time and space emotional connection. We walk away from that and we go like, I really like that guy, instead of like, hey, I just had a really good, cool, transcendence of emotional intelligence. You know, I wish we had that awareness, but clearly we don't.
Right.
So we discussed why being aware of our emotions and others' emotions through self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy is so important. And the importance of intrinsic motivation. So think about how all those come together, and how that leads to our ability to create meaning in our existence. When we have meaning and we have purpose, we don't have existential vacuum, which means we're not attracted to the negative energies. Okay. We're not attracted to the car accidents and the Spice Channel and watching cops. Like, watching cops just never computed with me. I'm like, why do I want to watch people get busted all day? This is awful.
Yeah, right. It's horrible, but we all do, right?
Yes, but I mean, it's the social skills that we need to really put it together. So let's define that one. Social skills are capabilities or aptitudes.
Okay.
Use that word. Employed by an individual when they're in interaction in an interpersonal level.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's how you deal with other people, right? To dumb it down.
Yes, but through how we deal with people from our heart, not from the perceived shoulds or doing our mind reading.
How you relate to other people. Maybe it's a better way to put that.
While identifying them as human beings. I think that's an important part, because often we make them an it, as we talked about in the last episode. And then obviously being in those connections helps us, like we just talked about, understand ourselves, and also helps us develop our identity or our self concept.
Yeah.
And so, because and we're social creatures, so it's extremely important for us to have some level. I'm an introvert, man, but I do have social skills, and I always have. And having those skills has helped me out. But it what really helped me connect with people was the ability to have self-control and self-regulation relative to the behaviors that I encompass in any given connection. Yeah. So I guess we think about. I'm just kind of going over this in my mind, and how social circles can have such an impact by social circle will reinforce a behavior. If it's a poor behavior and it's a toxic social circle, you won't know that it's an awful thing because it's accepted by the norm. So I think it's important to have those steps within ourselves and to be leaders within our own experience. To know that that doesn't make me feel good, and I'm not going to engage with you guys even though you're telling me that it's funny, or because as soon as I do something like tell I don't know, like a racist joke and somebody smiles, that person's giving me the permission for that to be okay, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess this is, I mean, it's at the social skills that we start to learn about emotional maturity, and because of the interactive piece, that we can develop our understanding of communication skills, or how to navigate different personality types and things like that.
Okay. Yep.
So I guess to sum it up, our emotions are in everything we do. They're everywhere. They're extremely important when we're trying to grow and develop. They are extremely influential in our state of mind. They affect our somatic experience or our body experience. And if you think about how stress does that to us and ages us, that's a really good example of like how the somatic experience is deeply impacted by our emotional intelligence or lack thereof. And I know that, like, based on my grad school studies, how important emotional intelligence is to be able to navigate stressful experiences, and how to understand my own personal boundaries and what is good for me and what is not, or what is good for my social world and what is not. So I guess my hope is that listeners will take this and start trying to incorporate these 5 tenets in improving whatever it is we want to develop or grow. And most of us we're on this path to looking for peace and contentment. I am, and that's kind of my everyday goal, is to start my day peaceful, which rarely happens, but end my day peaceful, which often does. And so those things are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills.
Yes. All right.
Okay, so now let me check. Yep. Okay, went a little bit over our usual. So
that's okay.
It's hard. It's hard to make that quick. You know what I mean?
I know that. Yeah, I'm not complaining, not at all. And that's just fine. Sorry.
So do you want to go back to what we were talking about before? How we're going to introduce?
Well, yeah. Let's talk about what we're going to do next week, and then just kind of give listeners or supporters. I don't know what the hell to call you all. Supporters an idea of what's to come, right? So hopefully we can hook them in for next week as well, right? So
yeah. Okay. So what? There's this guy named Eugene Gendlin. He created a manual. It's a book, but he calls it a manual, and it is 6 steps to learn how to be psychosomatically connected, or body and mind connected, motion center, in a way that we can understand what we're feeling at any given time. And it's really cool because when you get it, there's a shift in energy in the room. Like, it's a knowing. It's called a felt sense. So when my body tells me what the emotion is and I say it out loud, there's this paradigm shift that happens. And the more we practice this, the easier it is to be in that spot all the time. Bam. And so I'll always know what I'm feeling, which creates self-awareness, regulation, motivation, all the things. Yeah. So it's a really good practice. There's 6 steps: clearing space, felt sense, handle, resonating, asking, and then receiving. And so we'll go over that.
We're going to actually do that next week with myself, right? Yeah. So I'm going to introduce me to that process, right?
Yeah, we'll try it out.
Yeah, why not, right? Why not? Yeah. So to the listeners, maybe I'll put a link in the notes here so you can check it out in the meantime. And then if you want to follow along with us while we're doing it next week, that'd be great, right? And then the other thing I'd like to really get to is kind of unpacking the feeling wheel and how do we really use that in our day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
So I think those 2 things, so that'll lead up our time next week and be a nice way to round up this 3-part series. Right?
Is there a note thing here, chat? I'm going to put this in the chat so you have it.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
All right. So that's a link to...
Okay, great. So now I have it. All right. So before we get into the mailbag, let's do a quick break here for a PSA.
Cool.
With KTA.
Right, KTA, my guy.
Yeah. All right. Okay. awkward silence here. I'm going to have to do some edit.
Now, for a quick public service
Here we are.
announcement.
Okay.
One of the best ways to reduce stigma is with education. If you still have questions that we haven't answered on today's show, you can learn more about Together We Can's education group at twcrecoverylife.org.
Hi everybody, this is Carl with today's public service announcement about naloxone, or, as it's more commonly known, Narcan, a medication that can help save the life of somebody experiencing an opioid overdose. Did you know that in 2021 opioids were responsible for over 7,000 deaths in Canada and 106,000 deaths in the United States? These numbers are staggering, but there is hope. Narcan is a medication that can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose and help save a life. Narcan is available for free at participating pharmacies and harm reduction centers across Canada, and is also available without a prescription at most pharmacies in the United States. Now, I know most of you won't be around people using opioids, but you never know when it will be around you, and you could save the life of someone who is loved and who loves.
There you go. Just the way he enunciates bothers me sometimes. He's so good at it.
He's so good at it. I know. Like, I never want to do one of those ever again after listening to him, dude. I'm so bad
He's
at
just
that.
perfect at it. I know. And I, of course, I listen to myself talk all the time, right? I actually made a really, I don't even think you've seen it yet. My Lifeline to Connection video that I made yesterday.
Yeah, you know, I and you sent it to me. I'm the worst, man. I mean,
I get it. No.
and it's not. You have to know none of that. It's about time,
I know.
and then like exhaustion,
Forgetting, and then I get it. Right?
Yeah.
No,
and I also have to, I want to be afraid of my mind to be able to absorb these things. And you know, if I've done 4 sessions and worked all day, there's nothing left.
Well, this one, like I didn't even finish it till like 1 a.m. today, so I don't even know if I sent it to you, to be honest with you.
Okay.
No, not this one. So
Yeah,
I'd like to think it's my best work yet. I kind of screwed up on the animation a little bit, but whatever. So
I'm probably just sure you're being hard on yourself, like you do.
yeah, I do. All right, it's time for some mailbag questions. Got a couple of unique ones this time. Speaking to your humanist approach, let's jump into that one right away.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. Ryan, can you explain? Oh, sorry. This is from Carlos from San Antonio.
Texas.
Ryan, yes. Can you explain the importance of humanistic approaches in therapy, especially when dealing with addiction?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is, here's what I know about myself. If I feel judged by you, I'm shut down and you're shut out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you said that humanistic approach, and it makes me think of that I-thou relationship. So when we talk about using a humanistic approach when it comes to mental health and substance use, it is about creating a level space where two human beings to share safe communication that provides an element of explorative nature. So, in other words, we need to be in the part of the brain that allows for connection, joy, love, curiosity, and it's cyclical and it's rhythmic. The left side, the other side, is defensive, ego, fear-based, mathematical, logical, and linear. And so when we're working with clients, I mean, I use a humanistic approach all the time because there's so many similarities, there's so many common ground elements when we talk about one human being to another. I mean, it's not just, 2 lungs, a heart, 2 eyes. Like, there is hopes, dreams, goals, and so like often, when the system gets a hold of people that are struggling with the throes of or characteristics of addiction, they're often put into a box and dehumanized in that experience by like that's the term junkie, for example, right?
Yeah.
See the reaction you have to that?
Oh yeah.
So what if I were to call you that in a session? I'm out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Unless I was being really creative and up to something, but But I would never. I would never do that. So I think like the humanistic approach is absolutely essential because it allows a human being to enter into a state of potential that could provide the elements of flourishing. So when we talk about what a human is carbon matter that is organic, and we are of the earth, from the earth. And so what that means is that we need certain elements to be able to grow, just like a flower.
Okay.
And so those elements are nurturing, love, being heard, being seen. Those the tenets: to be heard, to be seen, to be loved, and feel lovable. And that is a very humanistic approach. That's a very humanistic statement because it embodies what our access to potential, and that is the thing. That's where hope lives.
Okay. Does
that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So
Most
as
certainly.
long as I believe I can be more than I am right now, and this person in front of me does too, now I have a chance. All I need is one frickin' person to believe in me. And I've said it 100 times on here. That's all I ever needed in my life was one person to believe I could do something. And, the more I believed that, the more other people did. So one person turned into 10, turned into 20, turned into wherever I am now, which I don't even know. But, I think about Martin Luther King, man, and like, he believed he could change the world, and he did.
Damn straight he did.
He would have never done that if he didn't believe in himself. And he probably had somebody believe in him at some point to allow that to nurture and flourish.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it does. I think it does a great job of it, actually. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so the next one I wanted to pull out here. I've got kind of a bit of a backlog here, so I know I did not want to say that to you, but
Why?
well, because then you're going to want to do them all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, what, Chuck, I trust you, man. Whatever you're going to do.
They come in peaks and valleys, right? So I might get 6 this week, and then next week we might not get any. So it all evens out in the end, right? Right? So it's just maybe not as fast as people would like, but welcome to my life, right? So okay. This because it speaks directly to our 3-part series. Okay. Sophie from Toronto says, Ryan, I often find myself struggling to put feelings into words. How important is it to develop an emotional lexicon in therapy and recovery, specifically? So let's speak to the recovery part of that question, because I think we've kind of spent an episode talking about the general terms.
Okay, I think I'll talk a little bit about my personal experience in that if I don't define things for myself, then I borrow other people's definitions. And so when we talk about, I remember getting to a place in like multiple years and almost like bitter. Like if somebody came up to me and said, what are they? I can't even remember the posters on the wall. Let God let go or something like that, or one of those sayings.
Yeah,
I would have just lost it. You know what I mean? Like enough. So I think like it's important to develop a emotional lexicon for ourselves and what they mean to us, and nobody gets to change that. Nobody has the power to tell you you're wrong in your own reality. People can have different opinions because they have their own. This is another reality construction thing. So, having a hard time getting the word to match the emotion. That's the Gandalf trick that we're going to do next week. About because we know this thing is there, yet we can't figure out what it is. So what do? We try it on. We find somebody, because verbalizing takes the power away or gives the power too, depending on whether it's asset or deficit. So when it's a deficit line and it stays inside ourselves, it turns into something nasty and destructive. That's when I don't get it out. When it's an asset emotion and I say it to you, then it becomes a strength building and connection, right? So so if I take this, Chuck, I'm going through this thing, it feels tight, it feels heavy, I don't know what it is. I'm going to try some words though. I feel sad. No, it's not it. I feel anxious. It kind of has something to it. I feel worthless. Boom, shift happens. It goes out to you, and it loses all of its power.
Yes.
And then you're going to say something back to me that is empathetic, and then I'm going to shift and grow within that conversation. So to answer, Sophie, is that her name?
Yes. Yeah. Sophie.
It's extremely important to try to practice putting words to the feelings that we're having. So please listen next week, because that 6-step process will definitely help in understanding what that practice can look like. And anyone can do that at the end of their bed, sitting on before they go to sleep, and do that 6-step practice. And it completely evolves our intrinsic perception of self and the way we are in the world. And for me, it was just like I used to give it to the guys on our treatment floor to practice, because it became such an easy way for them to access their own emotion center, and then start to develop the lexicon by putting definitions to the words based on a feeling. And that makes it sustainable. So when it's not in here, it's from here through here and out. That gives me that sustainable lexicon that I can use anytime. So when that motion comes up again, I already know what this one is, because I did that focus on it and it came up.
Exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we got time for one more question.
Okay.
Let's get it out of the way, and then that's one less we got to try and play catch up on. So right.
Sure. By the way, listeners, thanks for the questions. They're great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Watchers, supporters.
This is good. Lana from Chicago says, I've heard of mindfulness being used in recovery. How can I incorporate this into my daily routine, Ryan?
Well, it expands well beyond recovery, but when we think about what mindfulness is, it's actually kind of a dichotomy, because what we're doing is we're trying to stop the racing of the mind by getting into the sensation of our body. In other words, mindfulness is about being in the moment as the earth is spinning around the sun, hurling around in the midst of who knows what. And so when we can only access the now through feeling. So mindfulness is actually about getting out of the mind and into the body, so we can experience the life in motion as it's happening. And how that works in recovery is like, that gives me the space to identify, to attach to develop whatever thought or emotion or idea I have. And a lot of it's a negotiation of like, is this my idea, or was this given to me by the social construct of the social tapestry? And I think that once I'm at that place, I'm now entered into a new freedom. So use a recovery example. When we do step 9, you are saying your sorries. That's the sorry part, which I don't like that part. Yeah. What it really is it's about navigating accountability for myself and accessing a freedom through choice. And it's no coincidence that they didn't understand the articulation of this idea when the book was written. But in the very next page, in 165 maybe, in the second paragraph, it says you've now entered the realm of the spirit. In other words, you're now entered into a state of growth as an organic being flourishing on this earth. And it's because the oppressive state of victimhood always keeps us down. A victim never grows. That's the saying. So when we are in a state of accountability, we are actually in a state of progression and developing and flourishing as human beings. And so that's just one example of like creating the lexicon for yourself and matching that in recovery and using a mindful state to be able to navigate that. So mindfulness also reduces pressure because, and I'm going to be quick, I promise. Pressure from a scientific perspective, from a physics perspective, is force and a lack of space. That's how we have pressure. Now, the force is life, and life is, the earth is turning, so it's always going. Sun's coming up tomorrow. So that is a constant. It's static. The pressure, though, the whatever the wall is that's holding that, creating that pressure, is perceptual. So we create a mindful space to really circumvent or repurpose where that wall is and how that pressure is, because most pressure is, it's between our ears. And if we just create a mindful state, we can navigate that pressure and realize that, worst case scenario, I don't get this thing done in time. Worst case scenario, I don't know, let's use in recovery. Worst case scenario, I don't get my step 5 done this week and I get it done next 2 weeks from now, like, but we always put this pressure on ourselves. I mean, you do it all the time with your, and and like, I got to get this show in, and it's like, worst case scenario, that show didn't go.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, right.
But there's a good example of like creating a mindful space to be able to navigate that. And sometimes we create a mindful space in connection, which you and I often do. And we kind of navigate it together. But mindfulness is extremely important in everything we do, because mindfulness is our invite to life in motion.
Okay.
So when we are
that.
mindful, we are in the now.
Awesome. That's good. Well, that brings us to my favorite part of the show. That's the Daily Gratitudes. And we're going to do the thing with the thing again here. So, isn't this my life easy?
Today's Daily Gratitudes are brought to you by Revolution Recovery, helping men recover and become their best selves through support and treatment. They've been there and they understand.
Isn't that easier when I do it like that? You don't know.
Yeah.
What you got for us today?
Man, I'm grateful for I'm grateful for these series.
Yeah.
There's a lot that happens in between my ears, and this helps me organize it, because I get overwhelmed by my own shit. Like, so I'm grateful that we have a medium, we have an audience, we have people that.
Can I interrupt your gratitude for a second?
Of course.
Which is something I did want to share with you. So, a friend of mine from grade 6, when we first moved out to Strathmore, Robin, who then was in school with us through all the years, reached out to me last week just to say, hey, I absolutely love what you guys are doing. It helps me in my day-to-day. And it was really, for me, it was a really big deal to have that conversation with her. And thank you, Robin. I know you're probably going to hear this, so you should know. Like, I'm very grateful for that. But she was very specific in that, yes, these shows do help her, and I just thought it was just the coolest thing to get back. Like you say, from So yeah.
Is it? Is she in recovery or?
No, she didn't get into her history. It doesn't sound maybe something like that. I'm not sure, right? So it doesn't really matter, though, right?
No, I can't even ask that. It's supposed to be anonymous.
Yeah. One of the things she did say to me, which I found really interesting, was, I remember you being such a sensitive and something to that effect, kid or whatever. Yep. And I'd said, of all the things I can think about myself back then, that's not one of the things I would have thought. But, we talk about it quite often, how I guess I am that kind of guy or whatever, right? But
you've always been.
Yeah, right. And I just never saw it until, we started doing this, I guess. But her comments were so appreciated and just wonderful. But just when you say that now, I thought I'd bring it up real quick and say thank you for that, Robin. And then she bought a hoodie. So here we go,
cool.
segue, right? Yeah. So
very cool.
Get on the hoodies and t-shirts, guys. They are absolutely free to customize, and shipping is free as well. So they're actually really well priced, and we've made some really cool designs for people this last week. So
I got to get on that. Yeah. So and of course my family. I love my family. And grateful for summer, man. Now that we're at the end. I had a real nice summer this year. So yeah. And over to you.
Good stuff. I'm actually going to switch up the end of the show, believe it or not, this time. The lessons that I've learned, so the gratitude, right? The things that I've learned through this show, in no small part due to yourself, but also with Lisa and Mike and everybody, the recovery episodes, every single bit. I've learned so much about myself, and that what I was talking about earlier, that video that I'd made this morning, I figured, you know what, I'm just going to play that as the end of the show, because it kind of wraps everything up. And of course, to say thank you to the listeners. You guys, you're doing all the things. Please keep doing them. It's working out really well for us. So I think I get to switch it up now and again. I know it's weird that I'm switching things, so I don't want you to be, do you though? Yeah.
Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah. I used to say that to my ex. She didn't.
It doesn't always land well.
No, it really doesn't. No. Okay. It's funny. It was easier to say than it was to receive. I can tell you that much. All right.
The lifeline of connection, a journey from ashes to awesome. Connection, a simple word, but one that holds immense power. For many, like myself, the significance of connection became evident in its stark absence. For years, I navigated the stormy seas of addiction with the anchor of a perceived lack of connection weighing me down. It was like a boot on my neck, suffocating my aspirations, dreams, and even my sense of self. But why is connection so pivotal? And why did its absence have such a profound impact on my life? It's a fundamental human need. At our core, humans are social beings who yearn to belong, to be seen, and to be acknowledged. This isn't merely a desire, it's a need. And when these needs go unmet, the void can manifest in various detrimental ways, including addiction, as it did in my case. Everyone deserves to be seen. It's a simple act, to be recognized for who we are, with all our flaws, strength, dreams, and fears. To be seen means to be acknowledged, not just on the surface, but deep down. Everyone deserves to be heard. Our voices are our most potent tools. They tell our stories, share our pain, and express our hopes. To be heard is to know that our stories matter. Everyone deserves to be loved. This isn't just about romantic love. It's a profound understanding that despite our imperfections and past mistakes, we are worthy of love from others and from ourselves. Everyone deserves to feel lovable. Perhaps the most challenging yet crucial aspect. To feel lovable is to internalize the belief that irrespective of our past and present circumstances, we inherently deserve love and understanding. For me, these weren't just empty words. They encapsulated the emotional tumult I felt during my darkest days. The times when I felt unseen, unheard, and unloved were when the allure of addiction seemed its strongest. I broke free through connection. The turning point for me was recognizing the role that connection, or the lack thereof, played in my life. By forging genuine connections, I found the strength to rise from the ashes of addiction and transform into someone striving for awesomeness every single day. Connection became my lifeline, the thread that pulled me back from the abyss. In today's world, where isolation is sometimes celebrated under the guise of independence, it's crucial to remember the power of genuine connection. Let's ensure that no one feels the despairing weight of his absence. Instead, let's uplift each other, see one another, hear each other's stories, and above all, remind each other that we are always lovable. And remember, you are loved.